rounded angler. And from my experiences, when these kind of trips, when you go into a new county, you know, and you're unfamiliar with it, you can do a lot of background reading. But the one for me, from my past experiences, which can snooker you a little bit, and it's bait. And if you can't get the right bait, or you can't get fresh bait, that can make the difference between being there and getting a really good holiday, fishing trips, days, to absolutely sort of, you know, doing crap. And even sort of, if you've got poor bait, it even affects your decision making on where you're going to go and all this sort of stuff. So there's two ways around that. You can either fish for your bait before you start. Disadvantages is it's time consuming and it's not always readily available. You think it might be, and it's like you'll go there looking for some bait. So you can bring your bait in from somewhere else, yes you can, but unless you've got a state-of-the-art refrigeration unit in your car or something like that, it's not gonna keep long. You can keep it in a cool bag with some sort of blocks of you know, that sort of specialised packs and things like that, but it's not going to keep. So really, you're going to use it straight away. But that's better than nothing. That's better to go down there with something which is going to work from the off than not. So that way, you can go in and you can target a particular area, and then, you know, use your bait and go for it. So the next one I would say is you want to check your tides. And you want to be fishing, depending on what you're going to be doing, you want to be checking your tides to find out what is going to sort of unfold. And from my experiences, fishing down that way, off the rocks and things like that, it's pretty good to be fishing on an incoming tide for lots of different bits and pieces. So that way, you get different fish down there. You can get different sort of rays down there. You know, you get the usual suspects, but you also can get this, especially in the summer months, you can get some different types of fish. You can get like Croucher's bream and gilt-head bream, mullet are down there, the big grey mullet are down there, the conger eels are down there, the pollock is down there, the coolfish is down there. What else is down there? Wrasse. Wrasse is a, you know, you can pretty much catch them anywhere really down there, but getting like a smallish harbour wall one versus a remote location, maybe fishing a hardback crab, monster, you know, 5 pound specimen Ballon wrasse, you know, is what's on offer there. There's bullhuss down there, off the rocks. Like I mentioned, the rays, the skates, and the spotted ray. I know in the Falmouth estuary they get the spotted ray and the bullhuss. So let's go back to bait. It pays to identify a few areas where you can dig your own bait. Now, the lugworm is a very good bait, and it will help you with the smaller hooks, the size 1s, the 2s, the 4s, to pick off the smaller flatfish. You may even run into some gurnard, you may even run into a red mullet and things like that. So lugworm and wrasse like it as well. You can float fish with lugworm as well. Now you can go into the tackle shops around there and you can order some ragworm, but you don't get a lot. I always like to dig my own. So if you're not familiar with the area, you really want to identify some areas where you can dig for bait. Now, there's one area where you can dig for bait in Cornwall, and I think it's the Fowl Estuary. So it's Falmouth. As you're driving in, probably the A390, and this one here, see where my cursor is, that one in there, that is the Fowl Estuary. This one in here. And apparently you can dig lugworm in there. And looking at it, it wouldn't surprise me. But lots of these little creeks look like you could dig lugworm as well. So bringing a fork is a good idea. Where else can you dig lugworm? There's a place up here called Pedestal. And they do some fishing charters from there as well. I think virtually all the villages do fishing charters if you just want to go for a few hours. There's a bridge system somewhere, so whether it's this bridge down here, it must be. Let's go down there and have a look. Where is it? Or is it higher up? It might be this bridge. There's a bridge, Pedestal, That's got to be it, I'm guessing. So along this area here, but it all looks a bit logwormy around here. So in here is a place you can dig some bait. You can always set a pot for some hardback crabs. So there's a few places there you can dig some bait. So then really a lot of it's frozen baits with the tackle dealers. Now there's a tackle guys in I think Penzance, Newland, around that area. Helston has got some. Falmouth, obviously. They all have really. There's one up here. St Ives has got a tackle shop as well. So I know the blast frozen sand eel can be a particularly good bait for lots of species. So that, and it's quite cheap, and that ticks off a lot. So that, if you were surf casting, I would suggest that's probably a good bait to acquire. Strips of mackerel are good as well, and obviously, you know, squid. You're looking at a little bit more money, but squid can be quite a good bait. You could probably fish a whole squid into the kelpie bed areas here, especially as it's starting to get dark or into darkness for your conger eel. Certainly fish a mackerel head or half a mackerel for a conger eel or a flapper as they rig it up. Like I say, the hours of darkness are particularly good for the conger, but if it's deep enough and looks dark enough, and you know you could get one during the day on the right stage of the tide. I'd say incoming tide, top half of the incoming tide is good for conger. Bycatch is a biggish pollock or a bullhuss on that particular big bait. You may get a surprise skate or something like that if you're on some broken mixed ground, or a ling or something like that. You can always get surprises. Now, fishing off the rocks, if you're fishing fairly afloat and high up, depending on what bait you're using, but I mean, let's just say you're fishing about 1 metre deep or half a metre deep, something like quite high at the surface, you'll be targeting your mackerel, your scad, and in particular your garfish. And maybe a mullet too. So depending on what you use for bait, I know you can catch garfish on raw steak, but maybe bits of oily fish might do it as well. I'd be tempted to use some steak for that. You really want to sight your fish first, I would say, if you can see something. I would also recommend burleying as well. Chumming. So whether you get some freshwater ground bait and you just you mash up some soggy mackerel and just mince it all up and put it in the ground bait so it's oiled up. Put all the guts and everything in there. Get it all nice and just get it into little balls, little sort of damp, moist balls, not too well bound together. Maybe add a little bit of water to it as well. And just use your freshwater catapult and just catapult it in, and just keep doing that regularly, and try and set up a bit of a chum trail, or depending on where you are, if you're on a headland or something, you might be able to set a balloon out with a onion sack and have several mackerels in there, especially if you're catching a few mackerel off the rocks, and just mash it all up, you know, tread on it in a bucket and mash it all up with a stone or a bit of wood or something like that. Put it in the onion sack and just let it work in the tide. Just let the oil slick. You could probably even, you know, depending on where you were, you could even potentially run into like a smallish blue shark or something like that. So that's another sort of thing to it. But in that chum trail, you'd expect a few garfish to come into on you know, so you could target those. So that's that. So your wrasse fishing anywhere around these headlands here. Float fished on the bottom. Now, if you're fishing into the rough, into the kelp, you want a sort of some throwaway leads, and you probably want to attach them to some weak link, maybe 10 or 12 pound line. Once you go to a swivel, then your main lines to that, and have I explained that correctly? Yeah, so you've got your lead, weak link, swivel to your main line, and then attach your leader onto your main line with maybe like a 2-0 hook or something like that, and you can just probably put half a crab on, or a 2-inch crab, lugworm, ragworm, whatever, and you can literally just cast it out and just chuck it right into the kelp, sort of half expecting to lose your lead, and you can fish for a ballan wrasse that way. Some other species will be on the bottom as well, so you might be able to pick those off. But another traditional way to do it is just to fish on a float and have a float maybe set. I mean, if you can estimate the depth, you want to be about 1 metre off the bottom, something like that. But if you're halfway up, if there's a lot of wrasse there, you know, they'll take it. You can get the wrasse on the lures as well. If you've got some deep diving lures, little sort of Mr. Twister, wiggly sort of worm things with weighted end, you can fish those. You can literally just chuck them off the rocks and just jig them up and down. And you can run into food ballan wrasse around the edge, especially if you've got a bit of a trumtail working there. So that is that. The other one is the traditional, if you've got a bit, if you're there and there's a bit of surf running and a few of the headlands are getting whacked and there's a good surge there, then you want to try and position yourself so you're not going to get drenched, but so you can sort of fish comfy, but you need to be in an area where there's definitely other food fish, and you open yourself up to the bass world again. Do you know what I'm saying? And maybe you won't be doing that on the ebb tide or the top half of the income tide. So you can use the lures, work in the metals, the plugs, or the poppers for the bass there, and your bycatches could be a pollock, something like that. If you're fishing the metals, guarantee you run into a mackerel like that at a certain time of the tide. So having fresh bait is the number one. Another bait you can use for a conger is like a whole pouting or something like that. If you can go to a fishmonger's and they ain't got what you want, you can use, you know, a whole pouting or something like that. But apparently there's some good conger eels which can be caught off Cape Cornwall, this area. They've had some real big ones off there. But it's quite difficult to get down to. So you've got to pay in the car park. But a local would probably know where to park and not have to pay and stuff like that. But if you're new to it, you probably just want to pay up and, you know, and just do it that way, peace of mind. But if you're going in the evening, you might have to pay after 6 and things like that. But any of these sort of headlands here, now this is quite a big area. It may look like, oh, this is easy to go here and it's easy to do this and that. But when you're in on the ground, you're sort of blind. So it's important that you've got a list of places where you think you can sort of get down. So Cape Cornwall is one. They don't talk too much about Land's End as a place to go fishing. But they talk about this Sennan Cove, but I can't really remember too much about it. But let's just start right at the beginning. So this is Penzance, so there's fish and tackle shops in there. Probably get your accommodation in there and your fish and chips. Mouse Hole. Now this area here, along this stretch here, this is quite good for conger eels, I reckon. It looks good. But access along, it's quite remote along here. There is a coastal trail, but that's a long distance. But access is a car park down here, Moana Cove Beach. And you can walk along these headlands here on the coastal path. And some of these headlands here, you know, you're quite close to the car, and they're talking about catching conger and your usual suspects there. So that might be quite an easy access point. There's another one at the back of Mousehold, and there's one with these little fingers. We're talking about parking in the car park there at Mousehold, and you walk through the town, and these 1, 2, 3 fingers here, and fishing into the deep water here for a conger eel, especially as it's starting to get dark. But saying that, it's quite deep here, and if you can cast away a bit, and even during the day, if it's bright and sunny, for me on an incoming tide, the top half of the incoming tide, there's plenty of water there. If you're fishing for conger, there's no reason why you couldn't get one during the day. I used to get them during the day years ago, because it's in the kelp, it's quite dark, you see, and if there's a bit of a swell running, the kelp sort of swirls and moves up and down, and the conger's just, you know, he's got his head down in that anyway, and that's where your bait is going to be. So again, if you're fishing for conger, you might want to have your lead on a rotten bottom, almost be on each cast, sort of accept the fact that you're probably going to lose your gear. You lose a lead, and the hook size you want for the conger reel, for me, anything from 6.0 to about 8.0. if you're fishing off a boat for a conger, you're looking at 10, 12, something like that. But 6 to 8 would be plenty for me, you know, for a conger. And I wouldn't go too crazy with trace line. They talk about £200 line, £250 line, 100 for off the rocks is more than, and £20 line should be more than enough to cope with like a double figure conger reel. Should be really. Your chances of running into like a £50-60 conger reel for me off the rocks, if you're just going once over a week or something, do you know what I'm saying? It's pretty remote. So I wouldn't go too crazy saying I've got. If you're going on a wreck fishing trip, a specialist conger trip where you've chartered the boat and you've said to the skipper, I want to try and break the £100 barrier, then you want to start tailoring your gear for that. But if you're just going to go off the rocks, just trying to get an eel, then I wouldn't go too crazy. You could probably land a conger reel on £50 leader. So do you know what I'm saying? It's like you don't want to be just buying shit for the sake of it, especially if you're not going to be going a lot. So yeah, you can have a muck around on the end of the pier walls. Everyone does that. You can do that. I'm not really one for that. I like to go to sort of remote spots which don't really get fished. So there's another. So there's a few campsites around if that's your thing, or if you like sleeping in your car, or if you just want to get a hotel in the town or whatever. Right, there's Porthcurno Beach, this area here. Now, a lot of these places, being down here for a week, as per usual, it's dependent on the weather. If it looks good, head off. If it don't bother. But in Cornwall, if there's a southwester, you can fish the north side to get away from it. Do you know what I'm saying? The fishing's probably not quite so good, but you can still do some stuff if you have booked a holiday and everything. For me, some of the better ends of these is the south half. These sort of areas along here. You can mix it up with a boat trip as well. So anyway, so that's just going back to during the day. A lot of the beaches are going to be rammed, especially during school holidays. You know, are going to be rammed. So during the day, you can forget it fishing off the beach. But as the sun goes down, you know, if the tide coincides with that, you might want to, I'd say, an area like this, especially if there's a good bit of swell running. This beach in particular opens itself up to a good bass. And there's a lot of weed sometimes on this beach. So if it's quite calm, the weed on an incoming tide will sort of act as a bit of a shelf, and there's quite a lot of mullet in this area as well. So you can almost like freshwater tactics fish for mullet. Sometimes for mullet you can just like just have your main line to a hook with just some bread on it, and you can just lob that out as best you can, and you can fish like that for mullet. I'd try a bit of raw steak for mullet, little bits of ragworm or lugworm as well. So so there's options there, and obviously surf casting as well with smaller hooks. You'd like to think that you could probably pick up some different types of flatfish and things like that. Maybe you get turbot or something. So sand eel would be a good bait there. But there's something about worm baits. So there's 3 areas I've discussed there. No, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe 5 there. They do talk about this area here, but maybe sort of this headland here. Sennan Cove. Cape Cornwall, like you say, it's very exposed there, so you need a certain type of day. Even on a really settled weather, you get quite a bit of a surge there. So whether that would be fishable or not is another matter. If you're luck's in to fish it, then I think you'd probably do quite well, even in bright sunshine during the day, somewhere like that, because it's deep and very exposed. You'd expect to run into something quite good there, I'd imagine. Right, so other places you can fish. St Ives, there's a spot here in St Ives. There's a fish and tackle shop here as well. So you go get your bait, and I think you park. There's this island here, and I think you park in Porthgwydden Island car park. There it is. So you park in the island car park, and you fish an incoming tide, You get the best bait you can, and I think you perch yourself. This rock's not too high, and I think you perch yourself on here with your tripod and your beach rod, and you whack it out, and you fish this area out here. On an incoming tide, it probably don't matter too much. You can probably just drop it short, but there is a little bit of rough. So if you lose a set of gear, you probably just want to try and cast at a different angle. How far you can cast, I don't know. So if you're there, you're looking going to be getting out here somewhere. So it looks like it's low water there. So it's just sand. So it's place. Might be quite a bit of tide there as well. Whizzing past this headland here. So that's an area where you can get some rays and some gurnards and plaice and turbot and all that sort of stuff. That's quite an interesting spot apparently. So there's that one there. What else is there? What else is there? Giving you away all my secrets. Now, there's a beach here. It's called this beach along here. So Lubar it's called. And I think you drive along this road here. You can park somewhere along here. Try and get your car out of the way so you don't block the road or nothing. You get your surfcaster, you get yourself somewhere in the middle where this is, and you just fish out here. And it's a steep sort of beach, it's a storm beach. They call it the Cornwall's equivalent to Chesil Beach. You can get conger eels here. You can get virtually all species here, fishing off here with your surfcaster. Alright, so that's another good spot. If rock fishing sort of winds you up a bit, or you know you've done it all, or you just can't do very well at it, or whatever, and you think, you know what, I just want to get my surfcaster and go fishing. There's Helston here. There's a tackle shop there, and they should be able to supply you with some bait. You could probably do a lot worse than just fishing blast frozen sand eel on a traditional surfcasting rig out here, whacking it out here. I wouldn't walk too far down here because it looks like there's some rough. You can see why there'd be some conger eels there, because they'd be on this rough here, this rough ground, and they'd drift across looking for food from time to time. I'm not saying you'd get a monster, but you'd run into them if you were fishing, you know. But small hooks, you might pick off some nice flatfish, some brill or some turbot or something like that. Might get surprised, some plaice maybe. So that's that beach there. You can, if you just want to play around with the wife and kids and just stay in town and have some fish and chips, you can fish along this harbour wall here. What's this picture on it? What have we got here? Does it show anything? 4 photos, let's have a look. Right. Oh, isn't that lovely? I think there is a storm here, a massive storm, so you wouldn't want to go down there when there's a storm, but there's like a big wave breaking over all this and breaking over that church and these houses, and the mist is going over the houses. But you can fish, you know, on an incoming tide. You see the tide line up right up here, look. Fish along this wall here for bits and pieces, just for a bit of fun, and you'd have a wicked afternoon. But you can see the storm beach just there, look. That one there where my cursor is. So that's where you want to be fishing. But like you say, if you've got a stiff southwester bang on the nose, it might be quite difficult. And if it is like that, you still want to fish it. Well, you don't really want to fish it any more than a metre, really. Otherwise your line can start chafing in the gravel and sand. So you'd have to keep your rods really high up. So you want some real long rods, like 15, 16 foot high. So that's that. Alright, so there's some key, like, I mean, so there's lots of other places you can go and explore, but when time's an issue, you need to be able to identify where you can go quickly, and if something's not working, try something else, or, you know, the guys in the tackle shop will help you even more, and might even sort of say, well, you know, certain species is getting caught here at a certain time of the tide with this bait. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're rock fishing, be prepared to lose a few legs. What else can I say about it? Yeah, your fishing rods. if you have got an old spinning rod and an old beach rod, you might be better to take them because the rocks are sharp, and if you've got some nice gear, they will scuff it up. So just bear that in mind. And obviously on the rocks, rocks are very, very slippery, and you can seriously hurt yourself. And I've had a few close calls over the years, as one would expect. So all I can say is take your time, and if you're about to jump onto a rock, well, just try and put your toe on it, even if it's through your trainers or something, and just feel it, see if it's slippery or not. Something which doesn't look slippery, sometimes they can be. So you just got to be, and that's easy. There's be no forgiveness in that rock when you tumble over. So just bear that in mind, and that could ruin the entire trip. So just take your time. Another thing I would say, this time of year, bring some insect repellent, because you can get a lot of midges, and they'll drive you crazy. Sometimes you can buy like a cap with like a mozzie mesh over it. I'd recommend that. And also, if you're on the rocks in the evening, they'll drive you potty, so you want your legs all covered up, your arms covered up. So, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, come prepared. And obviously, you know, bring plenty of water and headache tablets and stuff like that in your tackle box. So, you know, if you are feeling a bit, you know, so you can sort of, you know, revive yourself a little bit. What else can I say? Yeah, I wouldn't aim to sit on the rocks all day. I would target like a window. I would say to myself, well, we're going to fish for maybe sort of 4, 5, 6 hours, and then that's it. And we might come back later on, or something a bit like that. You don't want to burn yourself out, and you want to be targeting maybe the top half of the incoming tide, maybe an hour after, or a couple of hours before low and over low tide. You might, do you know, there's little pockets of windows. From my experience of fishing, even on the rocks, that's like a mark which is really, really good. You notice the fish do switch off, like the Ballon rest and stuff like that. They will be crazy on, you know, on an incoming tide, top half of the incoming tide. They'll be crazy, and then you'll be ebbing away, and there won't be any bites at all. You know, you can burn up a lot of sort of energy and stuff. I mean, you need, as soon as you're aware that the bite has gone off, well, then you might as well, you know, pack your gear up, go back to the car, and then go down to the cafe and have a burger and chips or something, or have your fish and chips, and just chill out and think, oh, well, I might just give it a go in the evening for a bit. Do you know what I'm saying? It's all about timing and channeling things. But I'm sort of teaching old grandma how to suck eggs a little bit, but I'm just sort of saying what, you know, you can sort of, you know, you can waste a lot of energy on things when there's no need to. So there's St Michael's Mount's just there. I'm just trying to think if there's anywhere else I can sort of show you where you could go if you were going down there. Falmouth. Now, this is another spot. One thing I would say about the Fowl estuary here is it's got some relative shelter. There's lots of land-based opportunities. Well, for a start, there's a few tackle shops there. There's a few boats which go fishing from there. And you can collect bait, I think, from the River Fowl, if you bring your fork and bucket. On an incoming tide, these creeks all fill up there, and you can get a wide variety of species in here. Literally anywhere along here, really. The tackle shop dude will be able to point you exactly where to go to do it. They talk about bullhuss, and you get spotted ray in here. There's a beach here called Moana off this headland here. They reckon this is quite good. They reckon that can be quite good. During the day, you won't get on the beach, but the headlands look a little bit better actually. If you can cast far enough out, you can get on the sand here, you see, and you're a lot further out. So I would suggest maybe not even bothering there and just trying these headlands, because look how the sand here. But during the day, you should be able to see what it will be like, where you can put the bait, and that might be better to put a bait there after dark for a spotted ray or something like that. So that's one place. Moana Beach. Swan Pool. It's a very similar sort of affair. I mentioned that one. Penzance Castle. They mentioned this one. Now this one does look a little bit more extreme. Fishing off here. It looks a bit rough. It looks like there could potentially be a lot of tide, but you could probably get a wrasse off there if you didn't want to go too far. Wrasse fishing conger. But gear, looks like you might lose a bit of gear there if you're surf casting. So that's an option. Obviously the harbour itself. Just looking around, seeing what you see. You might see walking around the harbour here, you might sight some mullets. It might pay just to have a little float rig. I'd be tempted to try some raw steak for them. But they talk about in here, they call it, what's it called? Carrick something. What do they call it? They call it Carrick Roads. Carrick Roads. In here. Even right back in here on an incoming tide. But you probably want to speak with the guy in the tackle shop precisely on. He might name a little place like Cove or something like that, or park your car down there and there's a little track and just try in there. Now here they talk about not using grip wires, just using plain leads, and just let it trickle in the tide till it finds a footing. And they get all sorts in here. So there you go. So that's Falmouth estuary. But all this stuff's good. But if you want to boycott all that, and if you can get yourself on a boat, well, they'll take you out here, and you know you'll probably run into some slightly different species like a ling or there's quite a lot of whiting about there, haddock, codling, gurnard, congers. You know, so you could just pay the money and just go out on a boat. It'd be interesting just to go out on a boat anyway, just to see what it's like. I know St Ives have got a couple of boats out there. I think Falmouth have got a boat. Penzance have got a few boats. So it's definitely worth a couple of days, whether you just go on a half-day trip or a couple of half-day trips. And in the meantime, there's some areas you can try by doing it yourself. So it will be very busy down there in the summer. Pays to have some accommodation booked up. It's going to be quite expensive. Hotels £100 a night. Fuel's pretty extortionate at the minute. But I wouldn't go any further than this. If I was going down there to do some fishing, especially shore fishing, there's no reason why you need to go from really St Ives right across to Falmouth. This area here. That's the only area you need to focus on, even if you're there for a week. I think some of the better fishing would be right in here. But higher up, ports like Mevagissey got boat fishing, Lewes got some shark fishing, Plymouth do the conger. Even this area up here, Pedestal, I think they do some stuff as well. Newquay might do some stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? It's yeah, but this video is Falmouth and the Fal estuary, right the way through sort of St Ives and West Cornwall, or real southwest Cornwall fishing. That's what this video is based on. And just another thing you can do is bring yourself a bait trap and try and catch yourself some hardback crabs, because they'll be good for wrasse. I think Croucher's Bream like them as well. Obviously bass will eat them. Skate will eat them. So that's just another option, although they probably won't be peeler crabs. But they certainly a hardback crab will sort out a better ballan wrasse, that's for sure. Whether you just paternoster fishing tight to the bottom, or whether you got it under a float bobbing around in the swell. So yeah, remember, keep searching for your fish. And there you go. You want you really, these places, you know, you're carrying a bit of tackle, you want to be going to places which are relatively easy to fish. easiest access as much as possible. Okay, you expect to walk a little way. That's the nature of the beast. But you don't want to be walking, you know, for a long time. Not really. You know, you want to try and make it as easy as you can for yourself. So, good bait, organised tackle, not bringing too much clutter. You know, basically when you're there doing the basics well for a certain period of time. You know, don't flog yourself to death. And that's, you know, that's how I approach my fishing. And, you know, if you don't succeed straight away, then, you know, don't just throw in the towel. You know, if you're not succeeding well, you have to think why. What am I doing wrong? Your gut might turn around and say, oh, well, this is just a crap spot where I'm fishing. And you'll think, what the hell have I come here for? I should have gone to the other place. Do you know what I'm saying? And then, you know, you're done with it. But more often than not, you might turn up at the wrong, you know, check your tides. Check to make sure you're turning up at the right time. Make sure your lantern's got some charge in it. There's all these different things. Make sure your line's all right. You've got some spare line. Because if you're going to fish in a snaggy area, you expect tackle losses. All right, okay, you can go run into the fishing tackle shop the next day, but you need answers while you're there. You need to be able to turn, if the things aren't working out, or you're snapping offline, or the fish has just bust you off, you need to be able to respond, because you're there for a limited amount of time. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're not from the area, do you know what I'm saying? It's like Cornwall is blessed with some really good land-based fishing. They're probably not so blessed with a vast array of freshwater fishing, but they do have it. They've got freshwater fishing in these places here. They do have it, and yeah. So the drawback from being down here in the summer is that during the day car parks will be very busy, and driving is a nightmare. So they say that a lot of locals do a lot of driving late at night because they just cannot be bothered during the day. So just bear that in mind. And yeah, it's an interesting. It's really what's attractive about it is there's a lot of different species you can catch down there, and it's very refreshing compared to, you know, where you know most people in the UK are sort of based, whether in the Midlands or, you know, or even just like on the coast around, you know, the other parts. It's like they get lots of different bits and pieces here. You need a week really. That don't mean to say you're going to conquer everything. You certainly won't. But you would expect to pick off 1, 2 or 3 things that you don't usually catch off your coast. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's like it's similar sort of fishing to Ireland, really. Here, similar fishing to sort of Ireland. In here, they get some good ballan wrasse and stuff and congers off the rocks here, around here. Yeah. So, Chesil Beach is just there. In the back of the Isle of Wight, I think I've done a video on the back of the Isle of Wight. That's right. So that's Cornwall. That's my fishing guide to Cornwall. I did do one a while back, but I've done lots of different. I've done a lot more stuff closer to. I think I started around about Loo, and I worked my way down. But this one is very far tip. This one's suited to the, like I say, St Ives, in a line with Falmouth, really, and the Falmouth estuary. That's what this one is. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. There's some good places there to go. If you go, I hope you do well. Alright,